At 18, I walked out of my home with nothing but anger and $5 in my pocket. I thought losing my family meant losing my future. The streets felt colder than ever that night. But miles away, a cowboy my grandfather was about to change everything I believed about life. What happened next transformed me forever. Hello everyone! If you're new here, join our YouTube family by hitting the subscribe button and liking the video. Also, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Alright, let's dive into the story. I was 18 years old, but I felt older than the world itself. Anger lived inside me like fire that never stopped burning. Every small thing irritated me, people talking too loudly, teachers giving advice, neighbors asking questions, and especially my father. We had been arguing for months, maybe years, though neither of us ever admitted it. He said I was lazy. I said he never understood me. He said life was hard. I said he made it harder. That evening started like any other. The sun was setting outside our small house, painting the walls orange. My father came home tired from work, sweat on his forehead, silence in his eyes. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, pretending not to notice him. The tension between us felt heavy, like air before a storm. He asked one simple question: "What are you doing with your life?" I didn't answer calmly. I never did. Words came out sharp, full of frustration I had been carrying for years. I told him he never supported my dreams. I told him he only cared about control. My voice got louder. His voice got louder. The walls seemed to shake with every sentence we threw at each other. Then came the moment that changed everything. He pointed toward the door and shouted, "If you think you can do better, then go. Leave this house." For a second, I thought he didn't mean it. Parents say things when they are angry, right? But his face stayed cold. No regret, no hesitation. "Fine," I said, my pride louder than my fear. "I don't need this place anyway." I grabbed my jacket, not even thinking about where I would go. I didn't pack clothes. I didn't plan. I just walked out, slamming the door behind me as hard as I could. The sound echoed in my chest. Outside, the evening air felt colder than usual. Streetlights flickered on one by one, and suddenly, the neighborhood looked unfamiliar. The same roads I had walked my entire life now felt like foreign territory. I walked without direction, anger pushing my feet forward. At first, I felt powerful, like I had finally taken control of my life. No rules, no shouting, no expectations. But after 20 minutes, reality began to whisper. Where would I sleep? What would I eat? I checked my pockets. My fingers touched coins in one folded bill, $5. That was all I had. I laughed quietly, but it wasn't happiness. It was disbelief. 18 years of life, and my independence was worth $5. The night grew darker. Shops closed. Families went inside their homes. I watched through windows as people sat together eating dinner. Laughing, living normal lives, a strange loneliness wrapped around me. I sat on a cold bench near a bus stop. Cars passed quickly, their headlights flashing across my face. Nobody noticed the angry boy sitting alone, trying not to look scared. For the first time, anger began to fade, replaced by something worse, uncertainty. I thought about going back home, knocking on the door, apologizing, but pride stopped me. My father's words replayed again and again. If I returned too soon, it would mean he was right. At least that's what my stubborn mind told me. Hours passed. The temperature dropped. Hunger slowly crept in, twisting my stomach. I bought a cheap sandwich from a small shop using part of my money. Each bite reminded me that my resources were disappearing. I needed a plan. That's when I remembered my grandfather. He lived far outside the city, on a ranch surrounded by dry land and open skies. People called him a cowboy, though he never used that word himself. He wore old boots, spoke little, and believed hard work solved most problems. As a child, I visited him during summers. I remembered horses running freely, dust rising under golden sunlight, and nights filled with stories near a fire. He was strict but kind in a quiet way. I hadn't seen him in years. Someone once told me he was away traveling with cattle, moving between towns. I wasn't even sure he was home now, but he was the only person who might accept me without judgment. I checked the bus schedule posted near the stop. One bus left early morning toward the rural highway near his ranch. The ticket cost almost all my remaining money. I stared at the price for a long time. Buying it meant no backup plan. No food, money, nothing left, but staying in the city without a home was worse. When the bus arrived at dawn, I stepped inside with tired eyes and a heavy heart. The seat felt uncomfortable, but exhaustion quickly pulled me into sleep. As the city disappeared behind us, tall buildings turned into open fields. Noise faded into silence. For the first time since leaving home, my mind slowed down. I looked out the window at endless land stretching toward the horizon. Something about the emptiness felt peaceful. Maybe running away wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning. I didn't know what waited for me at my grandfather's ranch. Maybe he would send me back. Maybe he wouldn't even be there. But as the bus moved forward, one thing became clear. The angry boy who left home last night had already started changing, even if he didn't realize it yet. The bus stopped with a loud hiss, and the driver called out the name of the small roadside station closest to my grandfather's ranch. I opened my eyes slowly, still half asleep, unsure for a moment where I was. Outside the window stretched miles of dry land, broken fences, and distant hills glowing under the morning sun. The city felt like another lifetime. I stepped down from the bus carrying nothing but my jacket and the weight of my decisions. Dust moved with the wind, brushing against my shoes. The air smelled different here, cleaner, quieter, honest. There were no crowds, no noise, just open space and silence that almost felt alive. The ranch was still several kilometers away. I remembered the road from childhood visits, a long path cutting through fields and old wooden fences. My legs were tired, but I started walking anyway. Every step felt like moving deeper into a new chapter of my life. After nearly an hour, I finally saw it, the ranch house standing alone beneath a wide sky. The wooden structure looked older than I remembered, but strong. Horses moved slowly near the fence, their calm presence strangely comforting. My heart began beating faster. What if he wasn't here? What if he refused to help me? I walked closer, boots crunching on gravel. Before I could knock, the door opened. My grandfather stood there, tall and solid despite his age. His face was weathered by sun and years, eyes sharp but peaceful. He looked at me for a long moment without speaking. I expected questions. I expected anger or surprise. Instead, he simply said, "You look hungry." That was all. No lectures. No judgment. He turned and walked inside, leaving the door open for me to follow. The kitchen smelled of coffee and fresh bread. He placed a plate in front of me and sat across the table silently while I ate like someone who hadn't seen food in days. I wanted to explain everything. The fight, the anger, being kicked out, but words felt unnecessary. After I finished, he finally spoke. "You staying?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. He nodded slowly. "Then you work until you decide." Before I could respond, he stood up and handed me a pair of old boots. "Out here," he said, "everyone earns their place." The work started immediately. My first task was cleaning the horse stables. The smell hit me instantly, strong and unpleasant. Back in the city, I avoided even simple chores. Now, I was shoveling dirt and sweat under the hot sun. My arms burned within minutes. I wanted to complain. I wanted to quit. But my grandfather worked beside me without slowing down. He didn't shout instructions. He simply showed through action. Watching him, a man far older than me, working twice as hard, made my excuses feel small. Days began following a strict rhythm. Wake before sunrise, feed the horses, repair fences, carry water, fix broken tools, sleep early. There was no time for anger because work filled every hour. At night, my body hurt so much that I fell asleep instantly. Slowly, the noise inside my head started fading. The ranch demanded patience. Horses wouldn't obey if you were frustrated. Fences wouldn't stand if built carelessly. Every mistake meant doing the job again. One morning, while trying to guide a stubborn horse, I lost my temper and shouted loudly. The animal reacted immediately, pulling away and nearly knocking me down. My grandfather stepped forward calmly, placed a gentle hand on the horse, and within seconds, it settled. He looked at me and said, "Animals feel your anger before your words." I didn't reply, but the sentence stayed with me all day. Weeks passed. My hands developed my shoulders grew stronger. The mirror showed someone different, not just physically, but mentally. The angry energy that once controlled me slowly turned into focus. Evenings became my favorite time. After work, we sat outside watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple. My grandfather rarely spoke, but his silence wasn't uncomfortable. It felt peaceful. One night, I finally asked, "Why didn't you ask why I came?" He sipped his coffee before answering. "People come when life teaches them something. Talking can wait." His words confused me at first, but deep down, I understood. He wasn't interested in my excuses. He wanted me to learn through experience. Life on the ranch was simple but demanding. There were no shortcuts. If something broke, you fixed it. If animals needed care, you gave it. Responsibility wasn't optional. One afternoon, a storm rolled across the land faster than expected. Strong winds knocked down part of the fence, and several horses started running toward open land. Panic rushed through me. "What do we do?" I shouted. My grandfather mounted his horse calmly and said, "We move." We chased the horses across muddy ground under heavy rain. My heart pounded with fear and adrenaline. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about myself, only about finishing the task. Hours later, soaked and exhausted, we finally guided the animals back safely. I collapsed near the barn. My grandfather stood beside me and smiled slightly. He didn't quit. That small sentence meant more than any praise I had ever received. That night, sitting near the fire, I realized something important. Back in the city, I blamed everyone for my problems. Circumstances, bad luck. But here, excuses didn't matter. Only effort did. The ranch wasn't changing my situation. It was changing me. I started waking up before my grandfather, preparing tools, planning tasks, without being told. Responsibility no longer felt like punishment. It felt like purpose. One evening, as stars filled the sky brighter than I had ever seen, my grandfather finally asked the question I had been waiting for. "So," he said quietly, "what happened between you and your father?" For the first time, I told the whole story. The arguments, my anger, feeling, misunderstood, being thrown out. I expected him to take my side. He listened carefully, then said something unexpected. "Your father sounds tired." I frowned. He kicked me out. "And you walked out," he replied calmly. I didn't know how to respond. He added, sometimes too stubborn. "Men speak different languages, even when using the same words." His perspective shocked me. I had never considered my father's struggles, only my own feelings. That night, I lay awake thinking about everything. The anger I carried suddenly felt heavier, like unnecessary baggage. For the first time, I wondered if leaving home wasn't punishment. Maybe it was a lesson I needed. And slowly, without realizing it, the angry boy who arrived at the ranch began disappearing, replaced by someone stronger, calmer, and ready to understand life differently. Life at the ranch continued, but something inside me had already changed. The anger that once controlled my thoughts now felt distant, like a memory from another person's life. Each morning I awoke before sunrise, not because I was told to, but because I wanted to. The quiet hours before daylight became my favorite time. The sky slowly brightening, horses moving calmly, and the world feeling honest and simple. One cold morning, my grandfather and I rode out to check the far fences. The land stretched endlessly around us, golden grass moving with the wind. Riding beside him felt different now. In the beginning, I saw him only as a place to hide after being kicked out. Now I saw him as a teacher, though he never called himself one. After we finished repairing a broken section of fence, we sat on a hill overlooking the ranch. He removed his hat and wiped sweat from his forehead, staring at the horizon as if reading a story written in the distance. "You've changed," he said suddenly. I shrugged. "Maybe." He shook his head slightly. "Not maybe. Work shows truth. When you came, you were fighting the world. Now you work with it." His words stayed with me. I realized he was right. Back in the city, I believed strength meant arguing louder, proving myself right, refusing to listen. But here, strength meant patience, fixing things slowly, caring for responsibilities, and accepting mistakes without blaming others. That afternoon, while cleaning tools in the barn, I found an old wooden box filled with photographs. Most were faded images of my grandfather when he was young, riding horses, standing beside cattle, smiling with people I didn't recognize. One picture caught my attention. It showed him standing beside a man who looked surprisingly familiar. "That's my father," I said quietly when he walked in. My grandfather nodded. "Your father worked here when he was your age." I stared at the photo in disbelief. My father looked younger, thinner, but happy, something I rarely saw growing up. "He never told me," I said. "You didn't need to," my grandfather replied. "Some lessons are carried, not spoken. He sat down beside me and continued, "Your father left the ranch because he wanted a different life. City work, family, stability. Hard choices make hard people, but not bad ones." For the first time, I saw my father differently, not as an enemy, but as someone who had struggled long before. I understood what struggle meant. That night, my grandfather built a small fire outside. Stars covered the sky brighter than ever. The silence between us felt meaningful, like a conversation without words. Finally, he spoke. "You know why cowboys survive?" he asked. "Because they're strong," I guessed. He smiled faintly. "No, because they keep moving. Storm comes, they move. Loss comes, they move. Regret comes, they still move forward." He poked the fire gently, sparks rising into the darkness. "Life will knock you down many times. Anger keeps you stuck on the ground. Responsibility helps you stand again." His words hit deeper than anything I had heard before. I realized my anger toward my father had kept me frozen, unable to grow. Leaving home had forced me to move, physically and emotionally. Days later, my grandfather handed me an envelope. Inside was a small amount of money earned wages from my work at the ranch. "I didn't come here for money," I said. "I know," he replied. "That's why you earned it." Holding that envelope felt different from the $5 I once carried. Those dollars represented survival. This money represented effort, discipline, and self-respect. That evening, I made a decision. "I think it's time I go back," I said quietly. My grandfather nodded as if he had been expecting it all along. Running away teaches less than returning stronger. The next morning, we prepared for my departure. He didn't give a long speech or emotional goodbye. Instead, he handed me my cleaned boots and adjusted my jacket collar like he used to when I was a child. Before I left, he said one last thing. "Remember, being a man isn't about winning arguments. It's about building something worth protecting." The bus ride back to the city felt completely different from the first one. When I arrived weeks earlier, I carried anger and fear. Now I carried calm confidence. The streets no longer looked hostile. They looked familiar, like a place waiting for a better version of me. When I finally stood in front of my house, my heart pounded harder than ever before. The same door stood there, unchanged, yet everything felt different. I knocked. Footsteps approached slowly. The door opened, and my father stood there, surprised to see me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I noticed things I had ignored before: the tired lines on his face, the exhaustion in his eyes, the quiet worry he tried to hide. "I came back," I said. He nodded, unsure what to say. "I was angry," I continued, "but I understand more now." Silence filled the space between us, but it wasn't heavy anymore. Finally, he stepped aside, leaving the door open. ... That small gesture meant forgiveness. Inside the house, everything looked the same. Yet I felt like a different person walking through it. I wasn't returning as the angry boy who left with $5. I was returning as someone who understood effort, patience, and respect. Over the following weeks, our relationship slowly improved. We talked more calmly. I helped around the house without being asked. Arguments didn't disappear completely, but they no longer exploded into war. One evening, my father asked quietly, "What did your grandfather tell you?" I smiled slightly. "Not much." "Then what changed?" I thought for a moment before answering. "He didn't change my life by talking," I said. "He changed it by showing me how to live." Later that night, I looked at the sky from my window. The city lights hid most stars, but I knew they were still there, just like the lessons I carried from the ranch. I realized something important. Being kicked out wasn't the end of my story. It was the moment my real life began. An angry 18-year-old boy left home with $5 and pride. A stronger young man returned with purpose, respect, and direction. And somewhere far outside the city, a quiet cowboy smiled beneath the same sky, knowing his greatest lesson had never been about horses or ranches. It had been about helping his grandson find himself.